Hello, this is Eye on Africa here on France 24. I'm Rochelle Harrison-Pless. Good to have you with us. Coming up, 10 million jobs for Africans created in the next 5 years. The European Commission announces plans for a new alliance between Africa and the EU, one that focuses on trade and investment. South Sudan turns a page on its civil war. President Salva Kiir and rebel leader Riek Machar sign a peace agreement, but there's cautious optimism surrounding this latest offer of an olive branch. And farewell to the man dubbed the king of rock and rhyme music. Algerian singer Rachid Taha, famous for his fusion sound, has died in Paris at the age of 59. Thanks for joining us. First up, an ambitious plan to bolster ties between Africa and Europe. European Commission Chief Jean-Claude Juncker wants a new alliance with the continent in a bid to strengthen economic relations and boost investment. A proposal that could help create up to 10 million jobs in Africa in the next 5 years alone. The bloc's approach is moving towards a focus on trade and partnerships rather than charity handouts. For more details, I spoke to Dr. San Bilal, who's leading the Trade, Investment and Finance Programme in Europe-Africa relations at the European Centre for Development Policy Management.
The approach of the EU is very ambitious, but I think that the challenge is also extremely big. And so what the EU wants to do is to first stimulate investment, but not just with grants and subsidies like it used to do, but trying to use its development cooperation leverage in a smarter way. And they will do that in two ways mainly. One is to try to leverage more private investments. It's private investment that creates jobs. So in fact, it will not be the European Union that will create the jobs, but it's the investments that the European Union is going to, the private investment that the European Union is going to leverage that will create jobs. The second element is that what attracts investment and the flourishing economy is you need to create a positive environment in order to do so, conducive for business development. And so the EU intends not to simply provide money or stimulate investment by getting some of its own guarantees and different financial tools, but also to engage in political dialogues with the private sector, with the local authorities in Africa to try to identify ways to improve the business environment.
And what's significant about the timing of this proposal? And is the plan of creating employment opportunities in Africa also a way of tackling the flow of African migrants to Europe, a way to encourage people to stay at home?
Yeah, in fact, the proposal is not really new. I mean, the European Union has a lot of instruments already trying to leverage investment, and I made already proposals for its next budget to try to leverage more investment in Africa. I think what is significant today is that the president of the European Commission, Juncker, has made such an announcement very high in State of the Union agenda. And that is for political reasons, is to increase the awareness. And of course, I think the moving away from charity is for Europe to recognize that, you know, they want to move like a bit the Chinese were doing before into a win-win type of situation, and what President Juncker is calling reciprocity. So the intention is to try to foster development in Africa, to improve the condition in Africa, to reduce the pressure of migrants who would like to cross otherwise towards Europe to find a better fortune in Europe than they could in Africa, while the opportunities are enormous in Africa for development and for well-being of the people. So surely migration is one of the elements in the approach of the European Union.
That was Dr. San Bilal from the European Centre for Development Policy Management speaking to me earlier. Next, a new chapter for South Sudan after a nearly 5-year civil war. President Salva Kiir and rebel leader Riek Machar have signed a much-anticipated peace deal. The agreement was inked at a regional summit in the Ethiopian capital, Addis Ababa, and will see Machar reinstated to his former role of vice president. A previous peace accord signed in 2015 collapsed in tatters just a year later amid violent clashes between government forces and rebels. Our regional correspondent Julius Steers has more on the country's landmark step towards lasting peace.
The deal was signed on Wednesday night in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, under the auspices of a regional summit there. And the leader of this summit, Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, issued a stern warning to these two leaders. And it's a warning that has been echoed by the international community, particularly by the United States in recent weeks, really saying that the hard work is yet to come in terms of the implementation and ironing out the specifics of this deal, and really in seeing a real behavioral change from the two leaders. Now, the deal lays out a transitional government that will last for 3 years and that will take effect about 8 months from today. And it will see rebel leader Riek Machar return to the country into his previous post as first vice president. These two men have signed internationally backed ceasefires and peace deals before in the past, including in 2015 when a deal lapsed back into civil war. So as I said, there's cautious optimism, but really also a lot of trepidation about the hard work that remains in the months to come.
France 24's Julia Steers. Last week marked the start of a new school year for millions of pupils across the continent, but it's off to a shaky start in Cameroon, where a textbook on sex education for 12-year-olds has whipped up a firestorm. Teachers, parents and even the country's politicians have all blasted the course material, slamming the descriptions and illustrations as inappropriate. But some academic officials are standing by it, as our team on the ground reports.
This textbook on sex education has caused an uproar in Cameroon. Since the start of the new school term, excerpts of the book have been making the rounds on social media. For many teachers and parents, some of the terms used are inappropriate for young children. Terms such as sodomy, blowjob and zoophilia, as well as accompanying illustrations, describe sexual practices that are forbidden in Cameroon. Despite the controversy, the authority in charge of the national syllabus is defiant.
We take full responsibility for picking this book. From the point of view of those who evaluated the science book, it was the best one among those that were put forward on the topic.
From social media to the country's front pages, the anger shows no signs of dying down. Parents are ready to go to great lengths to have the textbook banned from the curriculum.
Our 12-year-old children don't really have time for this kind of nonsense. I will not purchase the book, and if I have to, I will tear out those pages. The Parent Teachers Association will complain to the schools.
Yet, sexual education has been part of the school program for the past 4 years. One writer of sex content in Cameroon argues that the problem is not with the subject in general, but with the strong language used in the textbook.
The first students who use these books are now aged 15, and in previous years there was no controversy. The problem is that some of the words used are very strong. Some of the situations described in the book are brutal.
The scandal surrounding the book has also entered the political sphere. As the country counts down to a presidential election, opposition candidates are using the public's anger to point fingers at President Paul Biya.
And finally, tributes are pouring in for the man dubbed the king of rock and rhyme music. France-based Algerian singer Rachid Taha has passed away in Paris at the age of 59. His family said he died of a heart attack. Taha was a giant of the French music scene, winning over fans with his fusion of Western rock and traditional North African sounds. Haxi Myers-Belkin has more.
A French classic with a North African twist, and a sound that quickly came to define Rachid Taha's style as lead singer of Carte de Séjour. Born in Algeria in 1958, Rachid Taha moved to France when he was 10. He was working in a factory when he first met like-minded musicians. Innovative rock and genre-bending arrangements became his musical signature. While offstage, he's taken consistent pride in standing up for causes he believes in.
Days like this remind us that AIDS is an illness that's killing people of all colours, and they all need our support.
In 1989, he embarked on an illustrious solo career. Successive albums embraced a number of different languages and musical styles, all this while keeping an eye on politics at home and across the Arab world.
In Egypt, they've just replaced one evil with another. I find that really hard. I've been touring for 31 years now, but not much of that's been in Arab countries. The lack of concerts in these countries is directly linked to a lack of democracy.
Rachid Tahar's ability to marry his Algerian roots with his French surroundings won him legions of loyal fans. That said, his greatest hit was his take on an Algerian classic, Ya Raya, recorded in 1997.
That's it from me. More news coming up.